So the hardest periods, they say, are when your kids are toddlers and then teens. In many ways, it's a similar state. I mean, they're different, but developmentally they're different, but they have parallels in that in the toddler years, a kid is starting to express their desire for autonomy. Let me do it. Let me do it. Well, guess what? It's the same thing in the teen years. Let me do it. Let me do it. They're really coming into their autonomy, their independence, their sovereignty. They know a lot, but they're still young, in their teen years. So you get a lot of pushback as parents. It's from them. It's very challenging to navigate those teen years. And so I know I needed to learn this, and then I saw it with this couple with their son. Their son was older than a toddler, but there's a tool. It's actually taught by Dan Siegel. He's a psychiatrist down in LA, and it's called Brain in the Palm of the Hand. It's a simple little process, but it explains a lot to us. So if you think of your hand as a brain, this is like the brain stem. The fingers are your prefrontal cortex, and this is where the center, your prefrontal cortex, has all your judgment, your moderating of emotions, your learning goes on in the prefrontal cortex, all of your executive functions, so planning, those sorts of things, time management. And then underneath is the more primitive part of the brain, which is the amygdala and the hippocampus, and those are the emotional centers, the more primitive emotional centers that protect us in times of danger. So this is also the center of fright, flight, flee, or faint, I think is what they call it. So this is where we react. These are our emotional reactions. The prefrontal cortex is what helps moderate that. So in positive discipline, we talk about when your buttons get pushed as a parent, and we often will flip our lid, right? We're angry. Everything's gotten triggered in us, our neurochemicals are, putting out stuff that's making us angry, and we are no longer accessing the prefrontal cortex, which helps us to moderate emotion. So when your lid is flipped, this is not the time to try to instruct your child in something. It is not the time to try to negotiate with your child. It is not the time to try to set a limit with your child. Take a break. And that's the lesson. It's like when lids are flipped, this is not the time to be engaging. So you can do that when things are calmer, but that's a really important lesson. And parents don't always recognize when our lids are flipped. We're not even aware. So just becoming conscious of like, oh, whoa, I just flipped my lid. So then find a way to re-regulate. So much in life is about re-regulating our emotions, coming back to a place of centeredness. And the other thing is that we're also actually modeling this for our kids. So when we're grounded and centered, so there's new research on what's called co-regulation. So in interpersonal relationships, we are co-regulating our emotional kind of feeling inside, our centeredness. We co-regulate with the people around us. If you're calm and centered, you're modeling that for your kid, but you're also actually co-regulating so that they're experiencing greater calm. When your lid is flipped, you're modeling that for your kid, and the chances are you're going to be co-regulating that with your kid. So high conflict households, this is where people's lids are flipped. Learning how to get grounded and centered, not engaging when your lid is flipped, taking a break. They call it self-soothing, so learning how to self-soothe, getting back to center. Then you can go back and you can readdress that, you can address that issue, whatever it was. And this works with spouses also. Not a good idea to engage when both your lids are flipped. I mean, sometimes people need to do that just to kind of vent and release some energy. And sometimes that's effective. I mean, I know like my husband and I, sometimes I think, we're better now, but in the past there were just times where it's like, we were just venting. We just needed to release some energy, but we're better now. We're way better now because we've learned these skills. So co-regulation, flipping your lid, getting calmer, learning how to do that stuff is so important as a parent and in relationship. And one other thought about that, when we talk about trauma-informed parenting, people who've had a lot of trauma in their childhoods, or the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, their more primitive centers of the brain, the amygdala, all of that, have been on heightened alert. There might be a vigilance there, or a hairpin kind of reactivity to things, right? Their buttons might get punched more easily, or they might just have a vigilance with them all the time because they had to. It was protective for them. So they're more sort of, amped up, just normally in terms of their kind of their own regulation, emotional regulation. That impacts, how the person who has that past trauma is impacting with other people around them. It impacts how they're relating to other people around them. If you find that you want to speak more and you want to tell people things, right? Because there's something in you that's like, no, I've got something to say, like that urge, that might be a sign to take a step back and observe yourself a little bit more. And also another teaching in positive discipline is ask, don't tell. So, I was in a bad habit of telling my teenagers what to do, and that did not work. So I had to learn the skill of asking. And when you start asking, it's fascinating what happens. Because a lot of times the person you're asking the questions, they will figure it out themselves. They will self-correct. So that's a big transition for parents. Asking, not telling. We're doing so much telling. So I think sometimes that sensation of kind of wanting to interject or speak up or, say something, you can feel that in your body. You can notice it in your behavior. For people that are coming from more traumatic backgrounds, you might feel a sense of bereftness, a sense even of emptiness, or really shut down inside. So I think some people, it just depends kind of what happened to you, your experiences growing up and what you've learned, what was modeled for you, how you were co-regulating with the people around you. There can be, for some people, a sense of like a cliff, that it's just feels awful. So alone, so alienated and just alone in this work, in these struggles. And an important teaching that is not a teaching of positive discipline, but it's a couple teaching. So it's not a parenting teaching, but it's more for couple support. It's from John and Julie Gottman. They're both psychologists. John Gottman, he's been a marriage researcher for, I think, about 40 years. He's at University of Washington, I believe it is. And it's a concept called turn towards. And it's referring to the fact that partners can, be together. They could spend a whole weekend together and not have a moment of intimacy. So you're in the same house. One of you is watching TV. The other might be, be on the computer. Somebody may watch a show late at night. Somebody else may take a bath. And you can go through this whole weekend and never really touch down with each other. You need to create connection with your spouse. You need to create that intimacy. And so turning towards, a lot of times when we feel at a loss with either the parenting struggles or maybe something at work, partners can get in the habit of turning away from their spouse or their partner. When you do that, you're starting to lay tracks down for that sort of continued behavior. It creates greater distance in the relationship over time. So this idea of turning towards, you have to start turning towards each other And it can be really hard because you make yourself vulnerable. And your partner may not know how to be there for you when you're turning towards. You're trying to turn towards, but maybe you're saying something really like stupid in the moment. So how can you turn towards them? So then you got to work through that stuff. So it's work. It's work. It's always going to be work to learn how to create better connections with your spouse, and certainly also our children. But this turning towards is a really important practice that we need to be doing with our partners. Wow, that's a good question. In my teen years, what are your biggest struggles right now? What are you not getting that you see around you? But I might want to do a lot of telling too. In my 20s, I might ask myself, what are you afraid of? What might your life be like if you don't go down this road? Because we really do come to these places, right, where we make choices and our life changes because of them. Yeah, I think probably always asking yourself, what is it that I want? What is it that I'm afraid of? What's holding me back? What can I do differently to make things better for myself and for the people around me? I think they'd be like, whoa, you did this? Are you kidding me? I would say, I had to give up some things, but I gained so much. And it isn't the things that we're taught in school to value and to treasure. Having a career is really important, and women do need to have careers, and we all need to have careers. And sometimes you might have to downshift, and that's a decision, that every family does have to make together on their own, how they're going to do that, if they decide to do that. There's a lot of choices along the way that you can make, and I think, my younger self, my 20 self would just be like, I cannot believe you did this, and how did you do this? How did you do this? Yeah, and I would say I did it by keeping an open heart, keeping an open mind. I had to let go of a lot of stuff, a lot of fear, being able to tolerate your own fear, keeping your heart open to the possibilities, making yourself vulnerable, and courage.
Thank you so much. Aww. Thank you so much for this beautiful interview. Just look in the cameras, tell them who you are and where they can find you on social media.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm Lisa Krausz. I'm a parent and couple educator and coach. And you can find me at